Hello, everybody. Hey, it's spooky month.
Yeah, she catches me in the middle of the laugh. That's not fair.
Well, because I was saying, like, I'm playing with our lighting here, and I'm like, oh, I'm looking real, like, dark and goth. And I said, he looks like Pugsley Adam.
Yeah, I was trying to not wear my glasses because you could see the reflection of the ring light. I try to do that every once in a while. It can get, but
Well,
now
like
then
I
I
said,
can't see.
It's October. It's spooky month. So
Finally, we're in the Halloween season.
yeah, which I love. Do you love Halloween?
I do. I grew, you grow up on Halloween. You grow up trick or treating and everything. My sister's birthday's on Halloween, but she's up in Washington, so we won't be celebrating her directly. But I'm sure we'll be doing like an online game night kind of thing.
My oldest daughter's birthday is the day before.
Oh, nice. Yes.
So yeah, so Halloween's always like really big with the kids and with her birthday. So
yeah, I don't trick or treat now anymore, but I'm always trying to find some good Halloween. I'm sure Ollie's is doing like a spooky walk. Obviously here in Gator, Mike's tradition is our own miniature Halloween Horror Nights, the haunted hike. They do that here in Cape Coral every year.
Well, I might as well pitch my other my friends over at the Calusa Nature Center. We're gonna have the haunted walk.
They do that I've been to that one as a kid before. That one's pretty interesting too.
Yeah, this is gonna be super fun. So that will be starting here in October. You can get your tickets online at the CalusaNatureCenter.org. And you're gonna want to get your tickets because it's just gonna be like super big. It's zombie theme this year.
Alien zombies, if we're dealing with the planetarium too. Zombies from Mars and Venus. And look, it's the Andromeda Galaxy. Oh my God, there's zombies from the Andromeda.
And actually, Ollie's has been helping to recruit some of the actors for that. But we always have a group of local actors that just like love to get into the character and have fun. So lots of great stuff. I know there's like a new corn maze thing down in Bonita. Farmer Mike's, you pick, and it's just a good time to get out. Lakes Park has got a big event.
Lakes Park always has a thing with the trainers. There's something there. I grew up at the Lakes Park one, and I think I've done the Calusa one as a kid as well. But yeah, and again, welcome to Democrat and Republican.
We just jumped right into
spooky month.
But it was almost super spooky.
Oh yes, you're right. It was almost
as we averted the shutdown.
Skin of our teeth averted that shutdown. Literally with seconds to spare. By the way, again, I'm Sean Hartman, the Republican. This is
Dr. Cindy Vanier, your resident Democrat. We're here at Ollie's, enjoying actually some football and brew.
Yep, and I have a Mountain Dew because that's Dr. Pepper.
Yep. So having a good time. There's always great events up here. But yeah, so let's dive
into that.
Shutdown.
It was very interesting. We were able to avert a shutdown, and it was basically done.
Averted the shutdown.
Democrats worked with Republicans to avert the shutdown. Republicans basically, Kevin McCarthy had to basically give in to the Democrats,
right?
And the reason for that is because of Matt Gaetz.
Yes.
And because a lot of people are, especially on my side, are going to be blaming Kevin McCarthy, and I understand why. But let's be clear: before yesterday, I think 2 days ago, we had a stronger conservative bill that would have funded border security, that would have had spending cuts, that wasn't perfect, but we were letting perfect be the enemy of the good, and it was good enough. And the fact of the matter is Matt Gaetz and his little rebel alliance decided to be like, no, I don't want this. I think he's learned a lot from his teenage girlfriends on how to throw a temper tantrum, because he is serious. I'm serious. I blame Matt Gaetz for this. It's a Democrat win. It is a Democrat win.
A huge Democrat
It is a huge Democrat win, and it is a Democrat win because of Matt Gaetz, not because of Kevin McCarthy. Look, if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And Matt Gaetz played a stupid game and cost Republicans what was going to be a pretty easy win. But
and let's not forget the ethics complaints against him, which Kevin McCarthy has already threatened to resurface as well. Those have not been closed. Those are still open, and that absolutely. So it's basically going to be a Republican mudslinging week.
Yeah, well, Matt's already said he's going to file the motion to try to remove him, and we'll see whether or not, because he is going to need Democrat support for that, obviously, as well, in order to actually see if they'll actually vote with him on that or not. I don't know. If
I think they'll sit there and watch you guys.
It might. Yeah, no, of course. I think
just like the first 15 rounds of the speaker vote. But let's roll this back a little bit as well. How do we get to the point where we're at a shutdown? Okay, so the Congress has to pass up to 12 different appropriations bills per year. There are a lot of times they're put together in certain ways. You know, the the defense spending and stuff. There's different times that they have to vote. But this is basically the big omnibus spending bill and appropriations bill that is needed to fund the government through the next year. And it is basically something that happens every year and ends up being a big hubbubaloo. And earlier this year, we had the debt ceiling limit, which is something that's different. Okay.
And we've had long discussion. We must have 2 or 3 episodes on that. So go back if you want to hear our positions on that.
Exactly. So that was decided earlier this year. Part of that, though, was an agreement on the appropriations, which is now. So there was a bipartisan agreement between Kevin McCarthy and Biden and the Democrats as to what that spending bill was going to look like, and it included some cuts, et cetera, and so forth. What ended up happening, though, is that the far-right fiscal conservatives in the Republican Party decided they didn't like that bill. And when the bill that they actually passed out of the House was included more spending cuts and had been part of that deal for the debt ceiling limit. And while in the Senate, that bill was the same one that has passed as the original agreement. So it kind of goes back to also reneging on an original agreement, right? Kevin McCarthy kind of gave in to that right-wing part of his party, and this kind of then culminated into this last-minute shuffle. And then the threat from Matt Gaetz was, of course, if you cooperate with the Democrats, I'm going to have you unseated. And then that is ultimately what ended up happening.
Yeah. And look, Kevin had to eventually be the adult in the room and do what needed to be done for Americans. He quite frankly put America first in this regard, because real Americans would have been hurt by a government shutdown. And this is the thing that a lot of, I think on both sides really, but where we want to be principled, we want to stand by our guns when it comes to these issues, but it kind of becomes hard when reality gets in the way and you see what are the actual effects of your principles. And if it's going to do real damage, then you shouldn't be doing it, even if it's something you strongly believe.
Well, you and I talk a lot about how fiscal conservatism often butts up against reality.
It does,
yeah. And we have this kind of concept and principle, like, well, we would like to have cuts, but it ultimately ends up hurting people. And one of the bills, the continuing resolution that was put forth by Byron Donalds, not only included all of this stuff about the border, but up to 30% spending cuts in Social Security, which no one wants.
Yeah, no. Your daughter is over here trying to get your.
She's trying to get into my phone. She's trying to stand 10 feet away.
We'll cut this from the podcast recording. No, hello. No, look, again, I forgot what we were talking.
The shutdown, and actually the grown-ups in the room were Kevin McCarthy and the Democrats, and I like this, like how you kind of tried to throw in like, oh, it's the other side. Listen, the Democrats were always there to pass a bill to fund the government because we fundamentally believe that we need the government. It's a large
that's true.
The United States.
Democrats are always okay with funding the government. People. Absolutely, 100% agree with you.
We don't want to see military folks and veterans go without their pay or their pension. We don't want to see Social Security beneficiaries go without their needed funds. We don't want to see Medicaid and Medicare recipients go without the care that they need. We do not want to see contractors who have contracts with the American government to do important things like infrastructure or healthcare or, prevention in any way, shape, or form go without their pay, because that is us also reneging on our agreements. It's good for America to have a functioning government, no matter how many people say, oh, you're never going to know the difference. There's 800,000 Americans that are employed by the federal government. And to tell people that it's not going to make a difference when it shuts down is a lie.
There might be average Americans who may not feel the difference, but yes, you have a lot of people who are going to be affected. And that's the funny part when you're thinking about Matt Gaetz and his district and how many of his constituents would have been affected by it. His very military heavy district. A lot of them would have been negatively affected by his showboating. Let's be clear about that.
Right.
And it's, is he actually representing his district when he's doing that, or is this more like a performance because he wants to run for governor and he wants to show that, oh, I'm a big, strong conservative who will fight against, Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans, and I'll be a child and I'll throw a temper tantrum anytime I don't get my way? Is that basically what he's trying to present? Is that his brand? I guess it is, because that's what he's doing.
I think everybody lost the plot on what the point was a long time ago. Like, okay, great. Spending cuts on what? But there was never a plan. There was never a clear action. And then there was this kind of tit for tat back and forth about Kevin McCarthy and his job. And he was trying to appease these far right fiscal conservatives. And it just...
And we've discussed budget so often, and we both agree, like, we need to start this budgeting process earlier and earlier. Like, if Congress gets inaugurated January 3rd, they need to start working like January 4th at least, to really start working on these budgets and these 12 appropriations bills and everything that they need to be doing, because this is getting ridiculous. This happens far too often, and it makes our republic look bad. It makes our system of government look bad. Mm-hmm. It makes it look like, this experiment with democracy is not workable. And then
if you have people who are elected and their entire point is to throw a wrench in the process, then it doesn't look like it works. But we can actually work. And actually, how did it work? Bipartisanism. Yep, bipartisanship. And I think that's what needs to be done. Dirty word. Dun, dun, dun. Well, I mean, and there's this whole thing, like the uniparty that's thrown around by the far right. And like, listen, let's grow up, right? I think you said it right, like the adult in the room. Let's grow up and realize that if you want to get things done, you're going to have to compromise. And everybody gives a little bit, everybody gets a little bit, and that's how the government works best. Yeah. This entrenched polarization where it's, we get everything, or we can only work with our side. Yeah. It's toxic. It's toxic, and it does not work for the American people.
And it's not like, Congress is like Florida, where we have the super majorities in the House and Senate, and we can ram through what we want. They don't have that. Okay, you still have to work with. We still have a Democratic Senate, and you don't have a full House. We have barely a 5-seat majority. It was 4-seat majority. Yeah, 4. Oh, even worse. I thought it was 5 seats.
One resigned.
Who resigned again?
I can't remember, but it's only a 4-seat majority. That's all I remember now.
I don't even know. I guess someone resigned and I missed all of this. Wow. Okay, but the point is, we don't have enough of a majority even in the House to justify being strongly conservative and taking
shithead. Yeah.
To really push through a lot of the policies we're going to want to push through. We can't really do it because we don't have the majority enough in the House. We definitely don't have the Senate, and we don't have the White House. So yes, it is about being realistic. And sure, we could try to pass bills to show what policies we would support. But at the end of the day, what we should really be focusing on is which pieces of legislation helps the American people that we can actually get passed.
Wow, I would love that.
Holding the line on those areas, where Democrats are trying to push for too much. And that's the other part of it with Republicans. Republicans have always been better as an opposition party, unfortunately, which I've never liked.
As opposed to a legislating
party, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. This is a big complaint I have, is that we are not as policy driven as we should be. We talk all these big games, but when it comes to actually implementing the policies, we aren't able to do it.
Right.
It's just something. It's one of my internal complaints with the party that we have.
Speaking of not doing legislative activities or policy-driven activities that are going to benefit the American people, the Joe Biden impeachment inquiry.
Oh, yes.
Was open this week as well. And the first hearings related to that happened as well.
Yeah. So I actually watched the hearings. Here's the thing I kind of have a position very similar to how Jonathan Turley's position was, which is, if you're looking at what we have right now, it's not enough to impeach, but it is enough to start an impeachment inquiry. And some of the things that were brought up that were missed, that I would really want to see investigated, because we need to know if it's true or not, is based on interview testimony. They're saying that, yes, there is financial funds transferred between members of the Biden family and this Chinese CEFC company, as well as with different Russian and Ukrainian oligarchs, and that there are meetings between those very individuals and Joe Biden. So I don't know if
there's no evidence that any of that is true. Well,
that's what they're going to be investigating. If there's no evidence
that that's true. The vast majority of what has been discussed thus far in the impeachment inquiries have been about Hunter Biden.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So there is so much of it, and I'm so sick of tired about how Hunter Biden was selling the Joe Biden brand. I think it was absolutely correct to say Hunter Biden was not the president. anything that Hunter Biden did to sell his father was Hunter Biden selling his father. That has nothing to do with his father, unless you can show such a direct connection.
Right.
So if they can't show that connection, then yes, I think.
And I think one of the things that you and I agree on is that we both agree that the influence peddling is wrong.
Yeah,
we would love to see it end, but that does not mean it's an impeachable offense.
Here's the other thing too that I've been thinking about as well when it comes to this as an impeachable offense. All of this happened, all of these allegations happened when Joe Biden was vice president. Can you impeach a president for crimes they didn't commit while president? I don't know. That's a serious cost. I'm asking this as someone who doesn't know. If you read the Constitution, possibly you can, because it's not very clear. But it's very interesting to think about. Like you think that if you're impeaching a president, you're impeaching them for crimes they committed while president. This is before he was president. And so that's a question. That's something I've been thinking about recently. Like,
so there's not okay. So there's a few things to keep in mind. One is that the impeachment inquiry process, trial, everything is inherently a political process. It's outlined in the Constitution. It is not the same as a criminal trial.
True. Yes.
It does not mean that there's a criminal trial. Oftentimes, it happens in conjunction with a parallel criminal trial or civil trial of some kind, right? But the impeachment inquiry itself is inherently a political tool. And it doesn't say explicitly that it has to be something that the president did while they were president. It just says high crimes and misdemeanors.
That's a good point.
But even at that bar, which is a very fuzzy bar, there's no evidence that Joe Biden, while he was vice president or president, committed any high crimes or misdemeanors.
You're correct. As of right now, there's no evidence, and that's why they're doing the investigation and the subpoenas, and we'll see if anything turns up. If nothing turns up, then yeah, it's a nothing burger.
It's a nothing burger.
It's a nothing burger, just like the Mueller report being a nothing burger almost. But anyway,
the Mueller report was a nothing burger. But anyway,
the point
is it proved that there was a significant amount of Russian influence and Ukrainian influence on behalf of the Trump campaign. But anyway, so one other interesting thing that came out of that investigation or the inquiry this week was our Congressman Byron Donalds got caught submitting fabricated evidence into the impeachment inquiry. Did you see about this?
I thought I saw something. There was discussion on it I didn't really catch exactly what had happened.
So what had happened, Byron Donalds submitted a text message that was supposed to be somewhat incriminating for the president, but it had actually been altered. And AOC actually called him out. So there was this big thing, and it seems as though he kind of knew, because there was plenty of shots of him looking smug and smiling about it. And he's like, well, I don't know if it was staff or whatever. But I myself, as a constituent of Byron Donalds, was extremely disappointed in his willingness to submit fake evidence, especially knowing that he was somebody that was pushing the impeachment inquiry, and that it has a lot to do politically with Donald Trump, whom Byron Donalds has endorsed, and the fact that he's using our apparatus, our time in the Congress to go after a political enemy on behalf of Trump, I thought was really disgusting and, just unethical at best. It's putting in knowingly fabricated evidence.
It's interesting, Byron is like me, a devout Christian, very open about it. And there is a commandment that says, do not bear false witness against your neighbor.
It's also a commandment against adultery, but that didn't stop him.
Especially divorce in general is considered a sin. But
he was married to another woman when he took up with, and actually got Erica Donalds, his wife, now pregnant.
I am not familiar with any of that story.
I am, because I'm very close with his ex-wife.
I'm not.
So
I have no comment.
Christian, he's not only lied,
but the point is that he should not have bore false witness. If you're going to
false witness and adultery, so that's about half the commandments right there. Wow. And
anyway,
the point after when he met.
The point Erica I'm trying
his church.
Not super familiar with all that backstory. I'm not going to comment on any of that. But what I will say is, if you feel so strongly that there's evidence there, then you don't need to fabricate evidence. It looks bad when you're fabricating evidence, and again, you're bearing false witness. So that's just a problem for me.
Yeah.
But
sounds like somebody needs to go find Jesus.
Everyone needs to go find Jesus these days. Everyone needs Jesus right now. Everyone needs Jesus, including many in our Republican Party too. But that's speaking of many in our Republican Party.
Nice pivot.
Yes, nice pivot. Let's talk about the Republican debate that I'm apparently the only one who cares.
Yeah, you're the only one who ever watched it, because what a flaming pile of shit that is right now.
Well, there was,
with over 50% of likely primary voters in the Trump camp. A lot of people are asking, what is the point of the primary? So tell us, what is the point of the primary?
I really
debate?
don't know. I mean,
at the Reagan Library.
So I think the point of the primary debate is to show that there are other candidates and to try to give them the spotlight to try to rise up in the polls, because this is races are a long time. Where mid-January is when we're going to start the Iowa caucuses. Look, does it look like right now with the poll numbers and everything that Trump's going to be the nominee? Yes, I'm planning and prepping as if he's going to be our nominee. That's sort of
also with this indictments. It looks like he's probably going to prison. So
I'm running for prison. One of the things is going full Eugene Victor Debs right there, except for the socialism part. Essentially, he's the anti-socialist Eugene Victor Debs. But anyway,
there is a fascinating time to be.
It is yeah, exactly. There's never been anything like this in political history for sure.
Country.
No, no, I'm glad that they still have the debates. I'm glad that you can hear these different candidates and their positions. Yeah, it was a bit of a cluster, at certain points. Well, first off, Doug Burgum, I will tell you, is winning me over more and more because he's the only reasonable conservative presenting actual policies, actual issues. And what I'm very impressed by him. So with this debate, he kept interjecting and making sure he got his voice heard. But anytime he had his time up, he maneuvered to get as many policy points in as possible. There was a question he was asked. It had to do with farmers and the trade war with China. He goes from farmers to cybersecurity to Iran to China, connects it to Ukraine, and then pivots to energy policy all in like a minute. And I'm like, what? You're like a freaking ninja over here hitting because that's the only way he's going to get his voice across. And he's very smart and articulate. That's
true. He was fifth in the time on the debates. He had just under 10 minutes and 9 minutes and 47 seconds of speaking time, and it was only because he interrupted so much.
I'm glad that he did it. I mean, he's not going to get to Florida, unfortunately. By the time Florida primary is going to be maybe like 4 or 5 people if we're lucky, but. Very strong conservative. I'm very much liking what he's bringing to the table. Unfortunately, he's 4 to 8 years too late, really. Vivek.
Going back to the quaint times when Republicans just like to argue over taxes.
I know, right? Back in the day when we were like,
instead of whether or not we're going to take over the Capitol and burn it to the ground.
I was like, oh my God, he's talking about free markets. Oh, I'm getting the vapors.
He got turned on by that. He was like, free market economy.
He's talking about limited government. Oh my God. Anyway, but no.
So Sean was very excited.
I'm loving Doug Burgum. Yes, absolutely.
Did you get your $5 or whatever from him? 20.
I never got jack squat from him, unfortunately. No, I should have jumped at that opportunity. No, Vivek did a lot better this time, but I think that mostly had to do with the fact that he was in between Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, and both of them were attacking him, and it was pretty vicious. But I think he learned from his previous debate because, like I said, he was very immature in the last debate. He came out more mature. He invoked Reagan's 11th commandment quite a bit, which makes sense because he was the one getting attacked most of the time. But
and he's in the Reagan Library.
Yeah, and he was at the Reagan Library, so it's very, very, very smart. But also, he was very calm when he was being attacked. While everyone else was interrupting, he was not interrupting other people as much. So I think he learned from his mistakes. There's even this one point where he's like, look, I know I'm the new guy in the room. I know I have to prove myself. And I come up as a eager know-it-all and all this. He was very honest and open about it, which I appreciated. So he kind of evened himself out from the last time and all the negatives I had of him. Tim Scott and Nikki Haley really pissed me off this one. Both of them were very much bickering. It was and honestly, it wasn't really their fault. So Dana Perino asked Tim Scott to explain to Nikki Haley why he should be president, which was the weirdest thing because they're basically asking him to mansplain to Nikki Haley, the only woman on the dais, why you should be president. And I think this is because, in case people don't know, Tim Scott was appointed by Nikki Haley. Mm-hmm. He's there because of Nikki Haley.
Right.
And they get into an argument over a bunch of different things. And at one point, they're arguing over curtains and who put these
$50,000
curtains that either Obama put it. And they're like, I'm like, what is this? Why are we arguing over $50,000 curtains? And it's ridiculous. Another thing, though, that apparently happened. And again, so I got a chance to watch it with the young Republicans, and a lot of young Republicans there are involved with Rubio's office and Rubio's campaigns back in the day. So when Tim Scott said that he had the only Hispanic chief of staff, a lot of them were angry because they know that Marco Rubio apparently has a Hispanic chief of staff. So not a good look, especially in Florida, who people know Marco Rubio, and a lot of them are very high up in Republican political circles. So very interesting stab there. But Tim Scott really came off as whiny, really came off as much more argumentative. And this is someone who's really built his campaign on the hope and the American optimism of the American dream. And it was just an entirely different dynamic from him. So I was very disappointed at both of their campaign performances. They just came off as very catty. Everyone else, Mike Pence.
He was there?
He was there. Yes, he was there.
I didn't hear anything about Mike Pence.
Oh my God. Mike Pence kept trying to drop jokes and they all fell flat. It was horrible. It was like, it's because, Mike Pence is so boring. You can't expect him to.
He's not funny.
But he goes like, I've been here in Congress for 12 years, but I think I felt sometimes it feels longer, and it's just like silence. And there was one, the cringiest joke, and you have to look it up. You'll have to look it up after. It's horrible. But they were talking about politicians being in bed with the teachers union, and he says that his wife's not a member of the teachers union, but he's been sleeping with a teacher for over 20 years. This is a thing.
It's an image nobody wants.
Yes,
nobody wants the image of mother in bed together.
I've never, in the history of presidential debates, I don't really think I've ever seen a presidential candidate say, yeah, I have sex with my wife. Yeah, we stoop all the time. I was just like, what are we watching? And it would just continue. It's like, I want to try to get all the clips and like put like a laugh track and the Seinfeld theme song on it.
Oh my God. Well, I did hear that one of the comments Nikki Haley had against Vivek was like, every time I hear you speak, I get dumber and dumber.
Yeah, that was very rude. I don't know. It was funny, but rude.
I don't know. And it was something about TikTok and she like slapped
on TikTok. So Vivek apparently, and that is quite interesting. So Vivek, they were arguing on his company's ties to China, and which I'm sure he has. I mean, he's worked in so much finance. That wouldn't surprise me if he has connections with China. Would not surprise me at all. I haven't dug deep enough into it, but it wouldn't surprise me. But he started a TikTok. He's on his campaign's doing a TikTok because he's out there trying to reach the youth. Reach the youth. Yes, exactly. He's trying to reach younger voters. And Nikki Haley is like, you're trying to get them on TikTok and do this and do that. And he's like, no, I'm trying to win. And he's like, I'm trying to get out there, and if we want to get our ideas out there, we're going to have to win. And that means reaching out to young voters. I mean, what's Nikki Haley doing to reaching out to young voters? Is her campaign doing anything? I don't know. I don't think so. Now, apparently she's attacking TikTok. I find it interesting, though. Vivek is all like on TikTok and everything. At the same time, he's like saying, if you're under 16, you shouldn't have social media. And if you're 18 to 24, under 25, you shouldn't vote. So it was like,
yeah, that's a way to win.
It's really weird how he's courting young voters by trying to be cool. But it's like, yeah, you know what's cool? Taking away your rights to be involved in your government. Yeah.
Yeah, not gonna work.
You know what's cool? Don't be on Facebook at 15. Don't be on Snapchat. No TikTok.
I don't think anybody who's 15 right now is on Facebook.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
They call it mom book and they don't want anything to do with it. I can't even get the college students to help me. They don't even know. All right. So it sounds like that was a big whole steaming pile of something. So thanks for the rundown.
Yep.
okay, let's talk about something else local here. So this week we had the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Ian. There was a lot of events here. Obviously, it's been very big for us here in Southwest Florida. We had 150 people had passed away in Lee County alone from the storm. We had $122 billion worth of damage. And we still have 20,000 residential units that had been destroyed or majorly damaged. And we have a significant amount of outflow from the community. People have had to move, and a 40% increase in homelessness since the storm, not to mention an increase in unemployment and the number of businesses that had been destroyed and couldn't function through the storm as well. And so there was a lot of things happened from the storm, but most of the events surrounded around resiliency and being strong and coming back together. There was the unveiling of the new replica of the Times Square clock down on Fort Myers Beach, with an official event with several elected officials, and Nikki Fried, chair of the Democratic Party, had gone to that as well. And I actually also hosted an event at FGCU, bringing students and student groups together through art and to celebrate resilience and tell their stories. So that will actually, you'll see on Big Mouth Media some of the stories that we captured from that. So definitely check that out. And actually, Nikki Fried came
I think
to
I saw the photos of that too.
I was able to get her in on that. So very interesting set of events. Cape Coral actually had an unveiling of a memorial.
We have a memorial rock, which I don't want to complain about it, but it just, I expected more. When they were talking about a monument or something, I was like, is this going to be a statue? Is this, and I haven't seen the rock, and I can't really read what it says on the photo, but the point, though, is I think it is important that we have a memorial. This was a major event in our city, and especially in our city's history, in our community's history. Definitely comparable to Charlie, for sure. Even worse than Charlie.
It was the worst hurricane that has ever hit the state of Florida. In terms of damage and loss of life. Definitely the worst one to hit Southwest Florida, and is going to top out as the most expensive storm to ever hit Florida. So also, one of the things I will say that was very cool about the FGCU event with the students is that there was a group of art students who were there who did a very interesting and interactive set of sculptures. They did an ice sculpture that had some natural components that melted during our ceremony. So that was kind of neat. And then they actually built these kind of, it's hard to describe, but like big poles with what are those, pool noodles, but they were the height that the storm surge was. And they did it at different points. So it was like 15 feet at Fort Myers Beach. It was like 13.8 on Sanibel. And then there was 5 other locations, including all the way out in Olga, which is towards the center going on the way to LaBelle. That was 7.8 feet of storm surge. And they made the pool noodles as tall as that was. And you know, and this is how we are as humans with numbers. Like I say 15 feet and you're like, okay, it's probably like whatever, how high, but like we don't really get it until we're there. So even me, I didn't get it until I'm standing underneath the 15
feet is almost like 2 stories.
And I'm like, holy moly. And that's just how much water there was in the storm surge. So it was like humbling, I guess, to a certain extent, and also to like recognize the power of the water and the waves and the storms.
It's just hard to believe it's been a year. I mean, like it feels like it honestly, for me, it somewhat feels longer. Like it was such a surprising event. I was with my grandparents with it, and you know, it was interesting to be there after and sort of having no power, no connection, no like contact with the outside world. It was almost apocalyptic.
It felt very strange. And I fortunately was on the interior part. Actually, I was out by Olga, but I was like not on the river. I was still out at the edge of Lehigh there. And so my family, fortunately, very minor damage to our house, just a few days without power. And we didn't know actually the first day after the storm, like how bad it was, because we couldn't see these pictures. We didn't have any cell powers, like cell tower stuff. So it was literally like you had no idea for the first day.
What we had to get to like the 4th story of my grandparents' apartment to get any amount of thing, and then I was just staying up there the whole time, getting in and out of like news stories. And that's when we first saw the Sanibel Bridge,
right,
which was destroyed, which like that's like the stuff you see in monster movies and stuff. Like I'm like looking at it, I'm like calling my mom, the Sanibel Bridge is gone.
Well, we were listening to the radio, like the emergency broadcast on the radio, and it's like when the sunlight came up and they were looking at everything, like they couldn't describe how it was. It was like, oh my God, well, is that Fort Myers Beach? Like you couldn't recognize it because everything was gone.
Yeah.
And I did read that it was 97% of the structures on Fort Myers Beach were either completely destroyed or majorly damaged. So we're talking, major damage. And we still do have a lot of damage. A lot of signs are still messed up. I mean, there's blue roofs. I actually went and visited a community that still has significant damage from the storm. And that's like a landlord issue kind of thing. Yeah. But it's we're not okay yet. Like I love that we can come together and be like, hey, we're strong, we're resilient, but it's not okay. And it's going to forever change the face of Fort Myers Beach for sure.
Oh yeah.
So
Fort Myers Beach and the islands have the entire makeup has changed, and it's gonna, with the reconstruction, there's gonna be a lot more resiliency efforts that we need to keep in mind going forward in the future. I think we're definitely gonna be very prepared for the next one, especially with this one. But yeah, it was our year anniversary. We had a lot of people down here, actually. A few of the staffers and Ray Rodriguez, actually, who is a former state senator, now the president of the
Board of Governors of the university.
Yeah,
that was a little. But thank you for putting through the congressional map that DeSantis wanted.
Yeah, we've talked about sort of my opinions of how that went down in the previous episode. You can watch that there. But what I will say, he was there, and a friend of mine who I knew at UCF who's working at Jimmy Petronis's office, who apparently he's thinking about running for governor now too. Everyone and their mother's apparently thinking about it in 2026.
Fascinating.
Which is interesting. Yeah, we've actually never had, I don't think, more than 3 major candidates, at least in the past 15, 20 years. For governor, it's usually only 2 or 3 major candidates really running for the seat. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens to see.
So it sounds like you're not thinking that Ron is going to give himself another term. There were people talking about that upcoming this session, which, by the way, the committees are already happening. So if you are a legislative watcher, go ahead and check out.
They're trying to increase his term limits, or
that they were going to waive it or whatever, get rid of it, so that because he was running for president, that he would be able to run for a 3rd term.
What? No, God, no. What do you get to run? You get to run for a 3rd term then every governor is going to run for president every 4 years, just so that way they can get a 3rd term. It's like
I'm just telling you
that is so stupid. Because then it means we're having DeSantis sycophants like we have Trump sycophants, and we need to stop in the Republican Party with sycophants of any type. We need to stop like blindly following leaders and look at their issues and look at their ideas. Anyway,
that would be wonderful.
It would be wonderful.
I hardly agree with
that. I'm sure you do. Yeah, we've talked about often how you long for the day of conservatives who actually are conservatives.
Yeah, I would love to have like policy-based conservatives, and then we can talk about it and be like, "Here's this."
And that's ironically what Vivek was talking about too. Is let's talk policy. We're all over here arguing and bickering. Let's talk policy. And so Vivek, I'm not saying he won me over completely yet, but he's did a lot better to improve his image for me. It came out more mature during the debate. Do you want to, I guess, talk about Dianne Feinstein as well, passing away? I feel like we need to bring that up too.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, rest in peace to Dianne Feinstein, one of the longest serving senators in American history, definitely the longest serving woman. Came into office in 1992 for the state of California, had been a champion for women's rights. And, she was reelected, I think, in 2018. Okay. And she passed away this week after many illnesses this year at the age of 90.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people have been very respectful and, you know, sending their condolences and recognizing her as a leader and an icon, what she was. But of course, then there's all this other discussion on, well, it wasn't really appropriate for her to have stayed in that position for so long, especially considering that she spent most of this year out of work because she had shingles and she fell and she just wasn't even able to do her job. And this actually stymied the Democrats' capacity in the Senate to be able to get things pushed through because she wasn't even there to vote. Yeah,
we've had those discussions before on the show. Look, was never really the biggest fan of Dianne Feinstein in general, especially on her gun issues. One of the things that I do applaud her for is her efforts in holding the intelligence community accountable on the torturing that we did and the human rights violations that we did in the name of the United States, which completely violates the ideals of this country. So for that, I applaud her, and I applaud her for someone who spent really all of her adult life since the 60s in public service. And we've talked before about term limits and all that type of stuff. And I had a friend of mine talk about how she's been all 80% or 90% of her adult life in politics. I don't think public service is an ignoble profession. I think it's why we're both in politics is because we think of it as public service, and the problem is most politicians don't. And I think if you look at her career as one of public service and representing her state well, her state's a liberal state. I wouldn't expect her to stand by my positions, but she stood by the positions of Californians, I felt, relatively well, and was able to get things done. This is something you talked about in terms of your opposition to term limits, about how you have that experience and people who can get things done because they know their way around the government. And,
and relationships matter.
And the relationships too. She was very good at that. So already there's a lot of bipartisan condolences going out to her, which I think is fair. I
think there is also I don't know the rules in the state of California myself, but whether or not there's going to be an appointment or a special election.
It's an appointment. Okay. Gavin Newsom has said he will appoint a black woman. He also said he will appoint a seat filler. Essentially, he's not going to appoint someone who's running. So Barbara Lee, who's been pushing, Barbara Lee has been pushing him to renege on that and appoint her, because he's like, you're just going to appoint a black woman as a seat filler. That's an insult. But again, I actually think he's right there. You have a bunch of people running. It'd be unfair to all the candidates to say, I'm going to appoint this person and decide who the senator is going to be. That decision really belongs to the people of California. So there's, different, I'm yet to be seen who he's going to pick. I mean, it took him 5-6 weeks to appoint Alex Padilla to Kamala Harris's seat. So hopefully it doesn't take too long. But, who would want to be just a temporary appointment for a Senate for maybe a year?
And then, is that person going to then want to run?
If they change their mind, exactly.
I think everybody who was in there would be like, hey, this is pretty cool. Let me run. So I don't know how he's going to get it so that they're not going to commit not to run. I don't think you can put that kind of condition on it. So
that's probably the condition. He has to have someone who has no political ambition.
At least
had he not said that he was going to choose a black woman, I would have suggested Barbara Boxer or something. Because Barbara Boxer was elected at the same time as Dianne. They both were the first two women to represent that seat. Barbara Boxer has the experience. She's retired. She'd be just in to finish the term and get out. And I think that would have been a perfect choice. But and I think he could still do that. But he made that promise because they, by appointing a Hispanic man who left Californians without a black woman senator, and everyone's demographic needs to be represented, I guess. But we'll see what happens. We'll see who he appoints. But I think that's probably the big one is you have a lot of the black women who would be good choices, London Breed, Karen Bass, people like them who if he appoints them, that's the end of their political career. So they're going to want to run for a full term because, because otherwise they're just,
what's the
gave
point?
up the mayor, gave up a position. I mean, Karen Bass itself, just won the mayor's race. So.
Right. Is who's going to want to do that?
Yeah, who would want it? No one would.
So we shall see. But thank you, Diane Feinstein, for your service to the, and frankly, thank you everybody who ends up running and especially is making the commitment to do so to improve our country and their community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other big burning stuff? I think we hit a lot of the
stuff. I think we had most of the stuff. Yeah. I mean, we were gone last week. So, and I think even the week before, we missed the UN summit. That happened.
A lot that happened with it this year. I mean, I think the biggest thing to come out of the UN summit was there was a significant climate change and climate action protest that focused on youth that happened. That was probably the most significant thing.
I feel like that's every summit, though.
Not necessarily. This one was pretty big because it's also coming off the legal win of the the Montana youth who had sued for climate action because it was their future. So kind of an interesting legal win there. So there's a lot of youth climate activists that have been, clamoring.
We'll see where that goes. Well, they wouldn't have liked the Republican debate because they were all talking about drill, baby, drill and everything. Yeah. There was one part where apparently Nikki Haley was hitting Ron DeSantis on fracking. Yeah. Apparently, I didn't even realize that, how she's saying he banned fracking. Do you know, what do you know about this misenvironmental?
He has not banned fracking in the state of Florida.
Okay. And so Nikki Haley was wrong and Ron DeSantis is right. You heard it here first from Cindy Bandy.
But it still exists. I mean, it exists in Estero here. So
that's what I was thinking about too. Is we were having this discussion about this too, about how we didn't want it locally. I know that Collier was having an issue,
right?
And we were having it here. So I thought it was.
I mean, and there's always been a moratorium on drilling off the Gulf Coast. So
since the oil spill, the Deepwater Horizon spill, at least.
I mean, there just is no, that's one thing that in the state of Florida, everybody agrees that they do not want to see oil rigs out in the distance in the Southwest Florida.
Yeah.
Tampa South kind of Gulf Coast. Yep. It does happen out Panhandle, Louisiana over to Texas, but not down in this part of the Gulf. So anyway.
So interesting part. But anyway, let's end that there.
Thank you so much for joining us here this week on A Democrat and a Republican Walk Into a Bar. I have been your Democratic host, Dr. Cindy Banyai.
Republican host, Sean Hartman.
And if you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to have your support for only $4.99 a month. You can subscribe and get all of our episodes directly sent to your inbox in full video, by the way. And you help to support independent media. So check that out on our website, bigmouthmediafl.com, on the plans and pricing pages. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.